My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about how the misuse of technology is killing our children. Now, there's a few reasons why I wanted to do this show, and I'm going to end up making it more than one part. So some of the reasons are this. Actually, the first reason is kind of interesting, I would think. You wouldn't think I would get from watching this particular movie I'm going to mention to this situation. But I was watching this movie from 1975, and I think it was known as a horror movie or a thriller, something like that. And it was called The Stepford Wives, if you can believe it. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is, in the beginning, it's kind of slow. So as you're watching it, though, you're seeing the people, or the women of this town in Stepford, where they're really weird. There's something wrong with them, and you know that, but you're not sure why. And they all seem to talk the same. They all have the same personality. They basically wear the same types of clothing, and their opinions are pretty much the same about everything. And as the movie goes on, you start to realize that they're not human, they're robots. And I thought about this, of like, why is this making a difference to me while I'm watching this? And I do a lot of therapy with young people, young adults. And I also live, right? I see people. And what I'm noticing from a lot of young people today is how robotic they are. They seem to have the same opinions about everything. There's very little uniqueness. And you're seeing more and more mental health situations with these young people. And it seems to be that because of social media and because of screen time, that they're using it as a drug in a sense, where they can't be bored for 1 second, and then they immediately go to social media or some type of screen. And what's happening is that they're losing their ability to be creative, not have any imagination. And if they have an opinion on something, they don't really have to listen to other people's opinions. All they have to do is find somebody in the massive world of the internet and find someone who agrees with them. And then they're like, well, it's good. I don't have to push my boundaries at all. So I've noticed that a lot of young people, and by the way, a lot of adults too, they're not really individuals anymore. I'm seeing these people that if you're really looking at them, you're really trying to have conversations, they're extremely robotic. So that's one of the things I was thinking of. Part two of my reason for doing the show today is I was thinking about vision boards, or people who, you can actually call them dream boards. And I think they can be good. You know, I mean, it can inspire people, it can motivate people. And for those who don't know, it's like you can have like a board or whatever, and you can draw like what your goal is. You can write down your goal. You can draw a picture of what your goal is. Or you could go through magazines and things like this and cut out pictures and put it as part of your vision board of what you would like to see in the future, what your goals are. And I think this makes sense, right? And you're seeing a lot of therapists use this in treatment. You're also seeing a lot of life coaches use this. I don't really have an issue with it, other than it's really interesting because in some ways it's a realization that our society is moving forward in terms of technology, but it's moving backward at the same time. Because when you see therapists using vision boards as a treatment plan, it's kind of sad when you think about it, because visions and dreams and imagination, all of this should be organic in children. It should be natural. Vision boards are the product of imagination, creativity, and agency, the ability to say, I know I can do that one day. But creating a vision board without the prerequisite, again, imagination, creativity, and agency, it defeats the purpose. So we have a problem here, is that why do therapists need to use vision boards when vision boards technically, and I'm going to do a whole show on what a vision board actually is, because really what you're looking at when you see this behind me, this counts as a vision board. You see Jimi Hendrix? Obviously, I like music. Specifically, I like guitar. So you already know something about me. This is The Who. So again, I must like classic rock. You go down the list. I like books. I like psychology books. I have a picture of my dog. Like, these are vision boards and dream boards, right? You can tell a lot about me just by looking about what's in my room. So the thought that you have to do treatment with a child to somehow conjure up creativity is very, very interesting to me, because throughout time before, when kids spend too much time on screens, vision boards were nothing that needed to be used or utilized at all, because kids did it themselves. Now we're trying to use it in part of a treatment plan. And by today's standards, I think that there's a good reason for that. But I think it's sad that we need to, because kids should be creating their own vision boards without adults telling them that you need to have some imagination and you need to be inspired to do something. So that's another reason. The other reason why I was thinking about doing this show, the misuse of technology and how it's killing our children, is I wonder what Mr. Rogers would say about this. Because Mr. Rogers had a show on TV for a very long time called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And it was a great show. Everybody loved it. But Mr. Rogers hated TV. He thought it was a good medium, but it was being misused. So he thought, and he was correct, that if he could get on TV, he could correct what was going on with TV. He could at least offer something of value that wasn't going on. And he did that. As I'm thinking about what Mr. Rogers would think about technology today, I think he would agree that the misuse of our technology is definitely killing our children. And there are ways to actually have it be beneficial for children. Unfortunately, the way things are, most people don't do that. Now, as I'm going through some of the information today, going back to the Stepford Wives for a second, this is going to be, in a sense, a very dystopian type of view. And the reason why I say that is because there's nothing positive, really, about screen time in terms of what the evidence shows. However, I almost can guarantee that I will not convince one person that screen time is a negative thing for their kids. So we see the train coming, we know it's going to kill people, and we don't care, right? Like, that is the bottom line. So I can give you the information, we all know the information, we all see it, we all see these kids being, somehow traumatized by life itself, but we don't want to do anything about it. So with that, let's continue with some of the information that I have today. So here's a fact. Over 50% of parents are using technology to babysit their children. And by children, I'm talking about between 0 to 5 years old. Now, obviously, they use it to babysit their kids much older than that, but I want to stick to the 0 to 5 for a second because it's extremely important. Because here's another fact. A child's personality is almost completely and fully formed by the time they're 6. Think about that. So with all the extra screen time that these kids are spending and less time with actual real life connections with their family or the caregivers, their parents, their personality is being formed by pixels on a screen. That's an inanimate object that doesn't show love in any way, shape, or form. Now, it doesn't take an expert here to understand how destructive this can be to a child's development. Let's continue and say the obvious. Babies don't have language, not in the beginning, obviously. So their development is absolutely and fully dependent upon the emotional, physical connection and the attachment to their caregivers. That's important. Without that, children don't develop correctly. They don't develop the amount of trust that they should have in people. They don't develop the prerequisite self-esteem that they'll need to have a good life. They'll think that something's wrong with them. They will be scared about life. Children develop security, self-esteem, and the ability to connect through real-time interactions with caregivers. Screen time doesn't provide this. It's just a screen. It doesn't interact. So what does it create? It creates some of the things I already said, mistrust, but it's also going to create learned helplessness because there's no reaction off of a screen. There's no reaction off of their caregivers. And you could say you could do a little bit of both, but every time you're spending time on a screen is time that could be better spent with a caregiver. Now, if you don't believe that and you have the heart for it, look up the experiments, the still face experiments, where you could see a parent who is connecting with their child, a child who can't speak yet. And the baby will mumble and they'll coo and they will try to like wave their hands and smile. And what they're trying to do is connect to their mother or father or both. And it goes back and forth. And this is how they start to learn. When the mother or father turns their back, or they just go still face and they don't have any expression at all, immediately what happens is the child starts to go into incredible anxiety, and it gets worse and worse until they cry and they'll start to flail around. And in that moment, you know you're traumatizing that baby. Well, there's no difference when you put an inanimate object in front of a baby and expect that to be its babysitter. It's abuse, plain and simple. More facts. We live in a high-tech world, and yes, definitely true, and we're not going backwards in that area. However, humans still have a Stone Age physiology, and that's a fact too. If you don't believe me, let's go with Patricia Kuehl. She is one of the world's leading brain scientists. She says, and she concludes, here's a quote, "Babies can't learn from machines. They don't learn from machines." Unquote. Here's another quote. "You get genius learning from human beings and zero learning from machines." Continuing, the World Health Organization, they recommend 0 screen time for kids 0 to 2 years old, and somehow they gave in and they said about an hour for kids 2 to 4, or like before they get into kindergarten, say 2 to 5. Now, I guess we can say that the World Health Organization is they're an upstanding organization, no doubt. But there's also big money involved here because there's no evidence at all that says that even an hour of screen time, what is the benefit to a child? 0. So really what we can get down to and say, if there wasn't some money involved here, the World Health Organization would say and recommend 0 hours of screen time for kids under 5 or up to 5 years old. Period. Period. No excuse. Let's continue. Studies have shown that without age-appropriate stimuli, and here we're talking about such as reading to a child, if you don't read to your child, if you don't talk with your child, if you don't interact with your child, they will have difficulties with attention span, focus, control, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation. And too much screen time correlates to frustration, irritability, decreased imagination, we've talked about that part, decreased motivation, less self-esteem, decrease in social ability, and a decrease in empathy. No kidding, they're not dealing with people. So what can you reliably say here is that if you're a parent, or we're as a society, a dystopian society, that thinks that screens are the way to go, especially with young, developing minds, that in the whole history of the world, they've never been developed like that before, what are we actually doing? Well, maybe not on purpose, but what we are doing is we're creating ADHD. We're creating mood disorders, personality disorders, anxiety disorders, oppositional behaviors, antisocial behaviors. And as they get older and you're looking at oppositional and antisocial and the inability to connect, They're going to have sexual difficulties as well. So basically, every area of their life is being destroyed. Let's take a look at the Torrance test of creative thinking. It's too much to say. Let's just call it the TTCT test. What it is it measures a child's creativity with pictures and with words. So children at a very young age, and we're going to talk about this in the next show. I'm going to get into some more details. But in this, children should be very creative with words and pictures. They've got young minds and they're not being filtered down with adults telling them how to think. Now, in this test, children are awarded for originality, the ability to elaborate, the ability to be flexible and have unique responses. Again, it's hard to have unique responses when you're always dealing with social media, especially as they get older, because all these kids, and I mean kids as they get older, young adults, their personalities are being curated by how many likes they have or by how many followers. So if you wear a certain clothing and you don't get a like for it, you're going to change your style. So you're never you, you're this fake facade of you. Robotic, going back to the Stepford Wives. So the TTCT test, it highly predicts personal achievement, number one. And number two, it has shown that creativity is a better predictor of accomplishments than IQ. All right, so if we're saying that creativity is a better predictor of accomplishments than IQ, and children's creativity and imagination is absolutely getting destroyed with screen time, we may need to look into this a little bit more. Here are some test results. Children's creativity has been decreasing since the increase in social media and technology. Big shock, right? Here's the conclusion, and it's a quote. Children are growing up more narrow-minded, less intellectually curious, and less open to new experiences. Another quote, technology hinders the development of a child's creative personality. Screen time decreased well-being, confidence, social competence, emotional maturity, language, cognitive development. It has also increased obesity, or contributed to obesity, increased behavior problems, speech delays, sleep issues, academic problems, and executive functioning. So with this scholarly material, I think there's only really one conclusion, is that yes, it is true that the misuse of technology is absolutely destroying our children. And as much as it seems like I've been a little bit making fun of them about how robotic they are and how many issues that they have, it's really not their fault, right? They're born into a situation. It's these parents that, again, they're also part of social media, and they could go on social media or some deep, dark part of the internet and find out what they want to find, because they don't have to go with what the experts say. They can go find what somebody else down the street says, and they believe them. But there is no real evidence here that says that overusing screen time is going to help a child. It absolutely indicates incredibly high that using technology and screen time to babysit your kids is going to have massive negative effects on your children. What I want to do for the next show is I want to talk about vision boards a little bit more, and what vision boards actually used to be when you allowed kids to be able to have imaginations and you let them be bored so they can come up with new and exciting things. Again, I'll give you a hint towards the next show. This counts as a vision board. You know a lot about me, right? Like even when I'm wearing this, it tells you a lot about me. That's a vision board. So I hope today was valuable for you. My name is Joe Prony. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.